There comes a point in every genuine human connection when the inner world can no longer stay quiet. What you are feeling right now is not something you invented. It is not wishful thinking or the mind playing its familiar games. It is the subtle but undeniable movement of another person's inner world being confronted. And that confrontation has everything to do with you. Somewhere in the quieter parts of their mind, they are standing at a crossroads, and your name is written across every direction that crossroads leads. They have tried to move past it. They have attempted to rationalize what they feel, to tell themselves that distance or silence would eventually dissolve the intensity of what exists between you. They have tried to convince themselves that staying away long enough would make it fade. But the deeper layers of the human psyche don't take instructions like that. The more they tried to push you out, the more persistently their inner world pulled them back, because what you shared with them was never surface level. It reached something in them that doesn't simply respond to being ignored or redirected. Right now they are doing something far more significant than simply thinking about you. They are evaluating themselves, their fears, the old wounds they haven't fully addressed, the limitations they have been carrying without examining them. All of it is rising now, and it's rising because of you. The decision they are facing isn't only about whether to choose you or walk away from you. It is about whether they have the willingness to look honestly at who they actually are. And that is a far more frightening thing to face than love itself. Part of them is drawn to you in a way they can't easily explain away. They feel your absence not just as missing another person, but as a kind of incompleteness within themselves. Like a piece of their own identity has gone quiet. And yet another part of them resists, because genuinely being with you, fully and honestly, would require vulnerability. It would require them to be seen without protection, to risk being changed permanently by what they feel. And transformation, even when it is exactly what a person needs, is one of the most genuinely uncomfortable processes any human being can move through. You may have already noticed a shift in the energy around all of this, something heavier, more charged, more present than it was before. That is because they are no longer successfully avoiding the truth. They are sitting with it now, perhaps for the first time without the ability to look away. They are questioning why you continue to occupy their thoughts even when they've done everything they could think of to stop it. Why your presence still echoes inside them emotionally. Why nothing and no one else has been able to produce what you produced in them. This is the last stage before something becomes clear. The mind can only sustain internal conflict for so long before it is forced to choose a direction. And in that choice, something real about who they are will finally surface. Not the version of them constructed by fear or ego or the need to appear a certain way. The deeper version, the one that is trying to align with what is actually true. If they come back, it will not be because of convenience or habit or because they simply had nowhere else to turn. It will be because something in them has recognized on a genuinely profound level what you represented in their life. They will understand that what you offered them was rare in a way that cannot be easily reproduced or replaced. And if they ultimately move in a different direction, it will not be because you were not enough. It will be because they were not yet ready to face the kind of transformation that loving you honestly would have required of them. So don't chase. Don't try to force the outcome or engineer circumstances to make something happen. The inner world unfolds according to its own timing, and the decision they are working through is part of something much larger than a single moment. Trust that whatever emerges will reflect the real truth of the connection, not the illusions or the fears or the distractions that once surrounded it. Because every person eventually has to choose between the safety of what is known and the risk of what is real. Right now, they are standing at exactly that line, carrying the weight of a decision that is going to change something either way. What is happening inside them at this moment is a genuine internal conflict. Not a passing confusion or a temporary moment of uncertainty, but a deep psychological tension that has been accumulating for a long time. On one side, there is the part of them that feels pulled toward you in a way that goes beyond easy explanation. Almost as though something beneath the level of logic is drawing them closer. This part carries real emotion, carries memory, carries longing, and carries a sense of connection that feels at once familiar and overwhelming. On the other side, there is a voice built from fear, from old experience, from the self-protective instincts developed across years of being hurt or disappointed. This voice urges them to step back, to remain guarded, to avoid the exposure that comes from genuinely opening their heart to another person. These two forces are now colliding inside them, creating a pressure that is demanding to be resolved. They try to manage it. They try to focus on daily life, to stay busy, to convince themselves that what they feel is not as significant as it seems when it rises. But the truth keeps resurfacing. The more they try to hold it down, the more forcefully it comes back up. This is because the conflict is not about external circumstances. It is internal, rooted in the deeper parts of them where real change actually originates. You have, without consciously intending to, activated something in them. Something that challenges the patterns they have always fallen back on, the emotional defenses they constructed to feel safe, the version of themselves they built to function without fully risking being known. And now they are faced with the most fundamental of human questions. Do they stay who they have been, or do they take the step toward a version of themselves that requires honesty, courage, and genuine emotional risk? This tension is exhausting in ways they probably can't fully articulate to anyone. It creates the silences you may have noticed, the moments of withdrawal that seem to come out of nowhere. One moment they seem close, almost as if they are about to let themselves fully feel it, and the next, something pulls them back inside themselves. This is not a game. It is not calculated. It is the natural and disorienting experience of a person whose inner world is trying to hold two opposing truths at the same time. They feel the connection, and they are also frightened of what honoring it would cost them. As this conflict intensifies, it begins to strip away the stories they've been telling themselves. They can no longer maintain the idea that you are just someone who passed through their life, or that what they feel is something minor that will eventually disappear. They are being confronted with a clarity that is both illuminating and unsettling. Every memory connected to you, every interaction, every emotion tied to your name is being returned to, examined, and felt more deeply than before. This is not comfortable, but it is necessary. It is the kind of inner confrontation that leads to real decisions rather than impulsive reactions made to relieve temporary discomfort. And so they remain suspended in that space between holding on and releasing, between the pull of desire and the weight of fear, between what feels safe and what feels true. The existence of that conflict is itself meaningful, because connections that hold no real significance don't generate this kind of depth of struggle. Something within them already recognizes the importance of this bond, even while another part of them isn't yet ready to fully accept it. There comes a point in every emotional journey when confusion begins to slowly lift. Not because the outer situation has resolved itself, but because the mind reaches a point where it can no longer sustain the strain of not knowing. That is where they are now. Clarity is emerging inside them, gradually, the way light works its way through something dense that has been blocking it. For a long time, they may have lived inside a story that said what they felt for you was temporary or exaggerated, or something they could bring under control if they just thought about it differently. But real emotions, when they are genuine, do not go away under pressure. They transform. They deepen. They become more insistent over time until they can no longer be denied understanding. What they are experiencing now is that quiet but undeniable recognition. The internal knowing that what they feel for you carries real weight and cannot simply be dismissed or managed away. Clarity like this doesn't arrive in a single moment. It comes in pieces. In the thoughts that find them late at night, in the silence between other things, in the way a memory surfaces unexpectedly and arrives with more emotional weight than it should if everything were truly fine. They are beginning to notice a pattern they can no longer dismiss, how often their mind returns to you without any invitation, how your presence continues to occupy their emotional space regardless of what else is happening in their life. How nothing else has been sufficient to replace what you created inside them. And with that awareness comes a shift in the question they are asking themselves. They are no longer wondering whether what they felt was real. They are beginning to understand that it was real, that it may still be. And your absence has played its own significant role in all of this. When you are no longer present in the way you once were, something in the emotional landscape changes. A kind of space opens up that cannot easily be filled with something else. Your absence has pushed them into a quality of reflection they might have successfully avoided while you were still close. Without your presence, your energy, the particular way you made them feel, they are left alone with their own inner world. And in that solitude, truth has very little to hide behind. They are beginning to feel the weight of what is missing, not just in the shape of their daily life, but somewhere inside themselves. Absence has a particular power. It removes distraction and reveals what was always there beneath it, what was perhaps being taken for granted without any conscious awareness of doing so. Through your absence, they are understanding your value in a way they may not have been able to access before. The specific things, the quality of what you brought into their life, the particular feeling of emotional safety or depth or aliveness that you created, all of it becomes clearer now that it is no longer there. This recognition is both painful and clarifying at the same time. Painful because they can feel what they have lost or stand to lose permanently. Clarifying because it forces them to see it without the blurring that comes from having it readily available. They may find themselves comparing others to you, not as a deliberate exercise, but because the emotional impression you left in them is still active, still present, still shaping how they register what is and isn't real in what they encounter elsewhere. And in those comparisons, they keep noticing the same thing. Something is missing, something they cannot quite produce from another source. And this only deepens the clarity that is already forming. The process is changing them from the inside. Emotional clarity and the ongoing reality of your absence are working in combination, pushing them toward a more honest understanding of both you and themselves. They are beginning to see not only what they feel, but why they feel it. And that deeper level of self-awareness is pulling them toward a decision that cannot keep being postponed. The internal battle they are carrying right now is not visible on the surface of their life, but it is affecting everything they think and feel and choose. Fear and desire are no longer operating separately or taking turns. They are colliding simultaneously, pulling in opposite directions with equal intensity. On one side, there is the pull toward you, something that feels almost instinctive, as if allowing themselves to be close to you puts them in alignment with something genuine and deep inside themselves. This is not a shallow or temporary desire. It carries warmth. It carries emotional depth. It carries a sense of connection they have not been able to find or replicate anywhere else. It is the part of them that wants to stop the distance, stop the resistance, stop pretending that what is real isn't. But on the other side there is fear, equally powerful, equally persistent. And this fear is not primarily about you as a person. It is about what the reality of loving you represents. It brings old pain to the surface. Moments from the past when being vulnerable led to disappointment. Times when trust was extended and not protected. Experiences that taught them to associate emotional openness with eventual hurt. These memories don't always arrive consciously, but they influence behavior in quiet and consistent ways. The closer they feel drawn toward you emotionally, the more urgently this fear speaks. It tells them to slow down, to protect themselves, to be cautious about stepping into something that could ultimately hurt them again. This creates an internal dynamic that is genuinely overwhelming. One moment they may feel ready. The desire feels stronger than the fear, and they can clearly see, in those moments, a version of the future where they simply allow themselves to experience this connection fully. But then, often without clear warning, the fear rises again. Doubt floods in. Hesitation returns. The need to withdraw becomes overpowering. They begin questioning everything. Whether this is truly the right choice, whether they are actually ready for what it requires, whether the emotional depth involved is something they are equipped to navigate. What makes this especially difficult is that both sides feel legitimate to them. Their desire is real, but so is their fear. They are not dealing with a simple situation where one voice can be easily dismissed and the other followed. They are navigating two powerful emotional truths that are both demanding full attention at the same time. This is why their behavior can appear inconsistent or difficult to read. It is not about being unsure of you specifically. It is about being genuinely uncertain about their own capacity to manage what they feel within themselves. As this internal battle continues building, it begins to erode their defenses. They cannot sustain this state indefinitely. Eventually, something has to give. Either the fear will retain enough power to hold them at a distance, maintaining control but sacrificing genuine connection, or the desire will become strong enough to guide them forward, choosing real feeling even in the presence of uncertainty. But this is more than simply making a decision about a relationship. It is about deciding who they are going to be from this point forward. And as the tension reaches its highest point, avoidance is becoming less and less viable. They can no longer pretend they don't feel what they feel, or that the connection has not affected them as deeply as it has. The battle between fear and desire is finally forcing them into a confrontation with their own truth. And that confrontation is bringing them closer, step by step, to a decision that will shape what comes next. A decisive moment is approaching for them, one that cannot be delayed much longer, regardless of how much they may still be trying to postpone it. Up until now, they have been living inside a sustained space of hesitation, moving back and forth between emotions, turning things over, analyzing, trying to maintain some sense of control over something that has become increasingly uncontrollable. But the inner world does not allow endless indecision. When feelings reach a certain depth, when the same thoughts return with enough frequency and persistence, they begin demanding resolution. And that is exactly where this stands now. They are at the edge of something that will require them to choose a direction. This approaching decision is not sudden or impulsive. It is the result of everything that has been building internally. The confusion, the longing, the fear, the reflection, all of it has been accumulating and moving toward this point whether they consciously recognize the direction or not. They are being guided toward clarity. The evidence is already present in the way they keep returning to the past, in the way they imagine possible futures, in the emotional weight they carry whenever thoughts of you arise. None of these are random occurrences. They are signs that something inside them is preparing to settle on what is actually true. As this moment draws closer, the intensity of their emotions may increase. They may become more restless, more contemplative, even more withdrawn at times, not because they are moving further from the feeling, but because they are processing something of genuine significance. A decision at this depth is not simply a matter of external action. It is about bringing internal reality into alignment with something they can no longer keep denying. There is a pressure building in them, a sense that time is no longer willing to wait while they deliberate. They are beginning to understand that remaining in the in-between is itself a choice, and not a sustainable one. Staying suspended, neither fully holding on nor fully releasing, has become exhausting in a way they cannot keep carrying. It occupies their mind constantly. It drains their energy. It prevents any kind of real forward movement in any direction. These are not easy questions, which is precisely why it has taken this long to arrive here. What gives this moment its particular weight is a quality of finality it carries, not necessarily in the sense that everything changes all at once, but in the sense that the direction they choose will define what unfolds from this point forward. It will determine whether they continue to resist what they feel or allow themselves to finally experience it without restriction. There is a seriousness to this realization, a quiet understanding that this is not just another passing chapter, but something that holds genuine significance in the arc of their life. And so as they stand at the edge of this, something is already shifting within them. The confusion that once clouded everything is slowly giving way to a need for clarity they can no longer put off. The hesitation that has kept them back is starting to feel more like a burden they are carrying than a protection they are receiving. They are beginning to understand that avoiding the decision has not kept them safe. It has kept them stuck, and that understanding is moving them, step by step, toward a moment where they will finally choose. Not because they have been pressured into it, but because they have arrived at a depth of understanding they can no longer pretend they haven't reached. What is unfolding now is not a temporary emotional reaction that will pass and be forgotten. It is a process that is moving toward revealing their true feelings in a form that can no longer be hidden or reshaped by denial. For a long time they managed to stay behind a certain wall even from themselves. Logic, distraction, physical or emotional distance All of these functioned as mechanisms to keep feelings contained, to avoid facing something that seemed too intense or too uncertain to sit with directly. But the deeper the feeling, the harder it becomes to maintain that kind of control over time. And now, they're approaching a point where everything they have worked to keep beneath the surface is rising with a clarity they cannot turn away from. Whatever emerges from this will not come from impulse or from the kind of confusion that leads to decisions people later don't recognize as their own. It will come from a place of genuine realization, from a point where the emotional truth that has been building inside them can no longer be reasonably denied. This is what gives this moment its particular significance. It is not about the surface behavior or how they have presented themselves externally. It is about what remains when all the defenses have finally worn thin. Because when someone is left alone with their own thoughts long enough, without sufficient distraction, without somewhere else to direct their attention, they begin to see things as they actually are. They are recognizing patterns in their own behavior that they couldn't see before or chose not to. The moments when they withdrew even though they felt drawn in. The times they stayed silent even when something in them wanted to speak. The situations where fear drove their choices more completely than their actual heart did. This awareness is not comfortable, but it is unavoidable at this stage. It forces them to confront the gap between how they have actually acted and what they have genuinely felt. And in that confrontation, something fundamental shifts. They are coming to understand that avoiding their emotions has not protected them. It has only delayed a reckoning that was always coming. As this deepens, their true feelings are beginning to take a more defined shape. What felt overwhelming or impossible to understand is becoming clearer. They are beginning to see whether what they have with you is something they genuinely value on a level that goes deeper than they have been willing to acknowledge. This clarity is not being produced by anything external. It is an internal awakening, and because of that it carries an authenticity that cannot be faked or manufactured. They are no longer capable of successfully hiding behind uncertainty. The truth of what they feel is becoming too present, too insistent to keep being pushed aside. It surfaces in their thoughts. It returns in their emotions. It shows up in the way they look back at the past and imagine different futures. It has become a constant presence, one that is asking to finally be acknowledged. And this is where their true feelings are beginning to fully reveal themselves. Not through anything they may say out loud, but through a deeper internal acceptance they are moving toward whether they want to or not. This process is shaping the outcome in a way that is genuine and that cannot be undone. Whatever they decide will come from that honest place, not from fear dictating the direction, not from external pressure determining the choice, but from a real understanding of what they feel and what that feeling means to them. And that is precisely what gives this moment its weight. Because when someone finally arrives at that level of clarity, their decision stops being a performance or a defense mechanism and becomes an actual reflection of who they truly are, rather than who they have been pretending to be. Something is happening beneath the surface of their awareness that is more significant than any single thought or feeling. It is a gradual and undeniable unveiling, where everything they have felt, questioned, or tried to avoid is coming together in a way that can no longer be separated from their understanding of themselves. The outcome they are moving toward is not random. It is not the result of outside pressure landing at a particular moment. It is the natural conclusion of an inner journey that has been unfolding for longer than either of you may fully realize, carrying them toward a confrontation with what is actually real within themselves. What makes this moment so significant is that it will bring their true feelings into the open in their most undistorted form, without the interference of ego or denial or the various protective mechanisms they have used to stay emotionally manageable. For a long time they existed inside confusion where emotions felt too large and too uncertain to handle clearly. In that state it is easy to misread what you feel, to question whether it's valid, to push it toward the edges of consciousness in favor of something more controllable. But as they have been forced to sit with their thoughts, to reflect genuinely on their experiences, to feel the weight of your absence and what it reveals, something in them has begun to reorganize. The confusion is lifting, creating space for a deeper awareness to settle in. This awareness is not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself loudly. It is quiet and steady and persistent. It shows up in the way they think about you when everything else is quiet. In the way certain memories keep returning with more feeling than they would expect if this was something that no longer mattered. In the way they are beginning to examine their own past actions with a kind of honest questioning they weren't capable of before. They are starting to see not just what happened between you, but what it meant, and the meaning is becoming harder to look past. As their inner clarity strengthens and illusions fall away, they can no longer deny their true feelings, and whatever decision they make will come from fully recognized self-truth rather than confusion or avoidance.